It's hard to know where to begin with this one. Do I maybe talk about the memes that came out from this? Do I talk about how it's structurally different in every other way to all the other games in the series that came out after it? Or do I point out that this game has its own speedrunning category called Halt Percent, where you have to get a guard to shout halt as fast as you can? I think I'll mostly cover that second point later in the video, but I also wanted to shine a light on the other part because, well, a lot of people out there have too much time on their hands, it seems, and I love it. The Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall takes place a little while after, who cares? I don't think anyone in the history of Earth has ever actually played Arena. If anyone says otherwise, they're lying. The game consists of the first dungeon, and that's it. No one has ever managed to leave that first dungeon. Anyway, why am I talking about Daggerfall and not something more recent? Well, I think that's mainly because Daggerfall might be the one game in the series that not enough people, who like Elder Scrolls games, has played, and that's actually a damn shame as I spoil the conclusion to this video by recommending this one. And before you reach over to your nearest bin to vomit into because the words DOSBox just came to mind, it's okay because an absolute legend out there has taken the game and pushed it through Unity, so now it looks like this. Which is a big improvement on what it used to look like, which was this. But it also got rid of a lot of the jank. Not all of it, mind you. In fact, in true Bethesda fashion, this game is massively unstable, even with all of the improvements. So please consider forming an intimate relationship with the quick save key if you ever do decide to play this game. More on that story later. And while yes, this is technically a mod, it is also the entire base game of Daggerfall and is undeniably the superior experience. And since you can easily get it off of GOG.com for free, you no longer have an excuse not to play this one, unless you only play on console, or don't have hands, or someone else plays games for you, or you live in an area that doesn't provide electricity. So most of the damn world at this rate. Upon selecting a new game, you can customise your character's stats, race and nads, and by race I mean everything you're used to except for Imperials and Orcs. For those who have played Morrowind before, then you'll be familiar with the major, minor and other skill sections, and levelling depends on raising skills in all groups. And for anyone who's wondering, yes, this is the part where you pick long blade as a major skill, consign short blade to others, pick up a short blade in game and then wonder why you can't actually hit anything with it. Shots fired indeed. You can also select advantages and disadvantages too, which would eventually be replaced with the star sign trait in all of the games after this, and I'm really shocked that Bethesda went with that because this system here is way better. You can pick a selection of advantages that essentially makes you a god from the second you start playing, or you could select some really novel disadvantages, like being locked out of being able to use magic for the entire game. This is all supposed to be balanced though, so if you do go for the One Punch Man build, expect to get one punched by literally every monster out there too. Enemies and difficulty levels depend on your stats and abilities in character creation, so it's best to go with something average unless you're nuts and like the challenge. Upon deciding on what you're going to play as, you're treated to an FMV cutscene of the same Emperor who will one day grow up to be a big, strong Patrick Stewart. And apparently that's Chancellor Ricotto, if you didn't notice the striking resemblance to how he looks in Oblivion. The Emperor fist bumps you and says, "Mate, I need you to do me a solid. King Lysandus of Daggerfall was killed in battle a little while ago, and now he haunts the city calling for insert first meme here. You need to go over to Daggerfall and find out what this is all about." Yes, I appreciate that we're in the Imperial City in the Imperial Province, and Daggerfall is all the way over here, and the fastest way to get there is to go south to Leyawiin and then round the coast to the northeast. It's no big deal, trust me. I know what I'm doing. I'm the Emperor. And then just as you're about to head out the door, he's like, "Oh, and one last thing. I sent a letter to the Queen of Daggerfall a while ago and it never arrived. It, contained a message of an, shall we say, intimate nature. And we're like, "Say no more, you dirty dog. Just have a castle ready for me as a reward when I come back." And so you head off to where the rest of the game is set, which is obviously, no, the game doesn't take place in Daggerfall. Well, you can visit Daggerfall. It takes place in the Iliac Bay. Iliac Bay. Okay. Which consists of about half of the province of High Rock and about a third, maybe less, of Hammerfell. As you approach the bay and look for somewhere to dock, Todd Howard forgets to arrive on time, or be chief developer for this game. If he even was on the Bethesda payroll at this point. So you manage to avoid getting thrown in prison for whatever reason, like all other Elder Scrolls games. Instead, you get caught in a storm and crash into a cave as your first level. The first level isn't difficult, since even those who have never played this game before know that to get out of this place, you need to go to where the throne is in the big hall, stand on it and pull the lever next to it, which takes you right near to the end. But before you get that far, you'll undoubtedly notice the combat mechanics. For those who have played Morrowind before, then please continue on to the next part of the video. For those who haven't, then it's a lot like Morrowind's combat, so I'm going to be really unhelpful here and just tell you to go play Morrowind first. But if you really can't be bothered, then the reason you might not be hitting those monsters even though they're right in front of you is due to several factors at play right now. One of them being a dice roll based system based on your stats. If you're actually in range to hit them is another thing, or if you're even facing in the right direction. If you didn't spec into Shortblade or are wondering why you can't hit anything with a Shortblade, then it's because you didn't spec into Shortblade. Eventually you will hit it and gain some XP, but you've got to create your character at the start with your playstyle in mind, otherwise you're gonna suck. Eventually you'll somehow get past that one imp that you couldn't kill because it can only be hurt with magic and you've gone for a warrior build, and you make it to the surface. At this point, like all other Elder Scrolls games, you can pretty much go off and do whatever. However, this time is not exactly recommended just yet. It's actually better to start up the main quest and leave doing side stuff for a little bit, and the reason for that is because the game at times kind of makes you do side stuff for a bit. Morrowind did this a little bit too, where Papa Caius wouldn't give you your next mission until you spent time gaining rank in other factions as part of your cover story, but almost all of Daggerfall's quests are timed, and that sometimes includes when a new quest will start too. The developers knew all too well that players would want to go off and do their own thing, so while you're waiting however many in-game days for the next quest to start, you'd go off and join one or more of the many factions in the game. And holy baby looking totems, there are a lot of factions to join. You've got your standard Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, Thieves Guild, Dark Brotherhood Guild to join. You've also got Knightly Orders that you can join. There's the Temple, which has its own temple branch for each of the 8 Divines, and yes, that's 8 Divines, because the Warp in the West hasn't happened yet, so Talos isn't a thing. It's okay, we're not sucking Thalmor cock here in the Iliac Bay or anything. Although admittedly you can only join a temple of one of the Divines, not all of them, so you'll need to pick your favourite from each one, despite all of them being the same. Except for Dibella, whose temples are literally filled with naked women, and no, I'm not actually making that part up, and also no, I can't show you because YouTube will get medieval fantasy on my ass about it if I did. I personally went with Akatosh because of Sean Bean, but also because I made Wayrest my main city, and he's got the only temple there. Each faction will allow you to pick from a list of repeatable quests and will have you do the usual generic stuff like kill an undead monster, or kill a bandit, or recover an item. Although the Dark Brotherhood will get you to murder people, they'll also ask you to kill assassins and stuff like that, while the Thieves Guild quests doesn't even have you do any fighting at all and just has you break into places and stealing items. And while, if I'm being honest, the faction quests are usually quite repetitive, except for those 2 Fighters Guild quests which are scripted and surprisingly good, it's the rewards that the factions give you that are worth it. In all other Elder Scrolls games, when you gain a promotion in a guild, the quest giver is usually like,
"Looks like it's time for a promotion. Due to your performance, I name you Journeyman of the Fighters Guild."
but what does that do? Well, in Daggerfall, earning ranks comes with benefits. The Fighters Guild lets you use their beds for free, but will also allow you to repair your gear at a discounted price. A discount that grows as you rank up. The Mages Guild will let you buy spells and potions, craft your own spells, teleport to other locations, and even summon Daedra on very specific days. The Temple provides healing and cleansing services, as well as letting you buy a different selection of spells and potions. You can even brew your own potions here too. Both the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood will allow you to pay smaller fines when caught committing crimes, which to me always seemed a bit redundant because the crime system in this game is hilarious and cheesable. Basically, if someone witnesses you doing something illegal, the guards will attempt to catch you. They will then tell you that you're being taken to court. You can agree and go, or resist and
Pay with your blood!
If you agree to go to court, you'll be presented with the TLDR version of your case. You will then have the choice of pleading either guilty or not guilty. If you plead guilty, you might get a reduced sentence. If you plead not guilty and are found guilty, you could get worse. However, if you plead not guilty and are found not guilty, despite being guilty as sin, then you get away with whatever crime it was you did. And crimes in this game sometimes aren't always clear. For instance, there are some that are very clear, such as breaking into places or murdering people, but if you start galloping at full speed in town on horse and hit someone, that's assault. I got caught out by that a lot, and went to prison a lot for it, so you've been warned, don't ride your horses at full speed in the city. Now that I say it, it seems really obvious, but anyway. And finally, the best faction to join in terms of rewards are Knightly Orders. Upon getting to max rank with one of the knightly orders, they'll give you a fucking house. Now, in this game, that's a big deal. Unlike later games where a house could cost you anything from 10k to 25k in gold, the cheapest house in this game starts at around 300,000 gold, with the most expensive I've seen going for roughly 1.2 million gold. And gold has weight in this game, so you can't walk around with all your money on you at all times, meaning that you'll need to go and deposit all of it in a Daggerfall bank.
Welcome to the Bank of Daggerfall.
But anyway, back to the main quest. So the main quest doesn't work like you'd expect. Instead of getting a quest marker pointing to where you need to go or having a journal entry explaining your current quest, instead, it's kind of up to you to figure out where you need to go or what you have to do. This game tries to keep that part at least as realistic as possible, so if your quest is to go to Daggerfall and find out why the big spooky ghost man is calling for vengeance, then the Royal Court of Daggerfall is probably the best place to start. So you begin to ask about, and some people probably know more than they're letting on, some might not know anything. This maid in the kitchen doesn't seem to know what's going on about King Lysandus, but she did hear something about a letter. Oh right, that's my other task! She'll give me some info if I do a quest for her. And thus, the story goes on. This will be how you start your quest lines in this game. You know that you need to go to a particular place for information. So you go there, you ask around the most logical places possible. At some point, someone will either give you a quest or say that they would give you a quest but your level isn't high enough, and at that point, you just go off and do your side content or whatever. But unlike all the other games in the series, the storytelling in this game is non-linear, and it'll be up to you to piece everything together yourself. I'd actually recommend keeping a notebook beside you when you play this, and taking down important details as and when they come up. And even then, don't trust everything you're being told. This game is really good at implementing the concept of the unreliable narrator. Two people might tell you what they know about a certain event, but both accounts contradict each other. For example, and I found this out by pure accident, the book The War of Bethany can be found in two versions. If you read the book while you're in the Kingdom of Daggerfall, it'll tell you an account that favours Daggerfall. However, if you then travel to Sentinel in Hammerfell and find the same titled book over there, it will tell a very different account that favours them instead. So which one are you supposed to believe, if any? As the game goes on, you begin to realise that literally everything you've been told is wrapped in lies, and this leads to a quest with far bigger stakes than you originally thought, making it more along the epic lines of all the other games in the series. And while I really do like the way the game tells this story, I don't however like how the quests themselves are started. Outside of talking to various people of the court, the game will trigger main story quests for you once certain criteria have been met. Namely, that you're of a particular level, and that a certain amount of time has passed since you completed the previous main quest. At which point, the game jams a letter in your pocket with details on your next quest. It's supposed to represent a messenger walking past you and sneakily slipping a letter in your pocket, but on the last quest of the game, you get like 7 of these letters back to back, and I just imagine a line of sneaky messengers all queuing up behind me to place an important document in my pockets without me noticing. Also, I mentioned before, but almost all the quests in this game are timed. That's not by way of a timer appearing on your screen, but whenever you accept a quest, the quest giver will be like, I need you to go over to this town and meet with this person. Give them this item and then report back to me. You need to be back here within, I don't know, for example's sake, 34 days. At this point, the timer starts and it's based on in-game days now. Well, the Iliac Bay is a massive place. In fact, considering that the map isn't procedurally generated, the landmass is the size of the actual United Kingdom in real life, so it's not advised to go riding through the countryside as a way of travelling from one place to another. Though you don't need to have previously visited any of the locations in the game to actually go there, with the exception of one place anyway, actually getting somewhere is going to take in-game days, but also money to get there. You can spend money along the journey to stay at inns, which means you'll be rested when you get to your destination, although this is free if you join the Knightly Order. Or you can get there faster in less time by not staying in inns, but you won't be rested by the time you reach your destination, and you may find that some bastard has stolen your coins from your purse during the journey. Managing to return to the quest giver in time will mean that you've completed the quest. Well done. However, if you fail in your objective, or you fail to return to the quest giver in time, will mean that you failed the quest. And failing a quest in this game is bad. Failing a quest for one of the factions will mean that you lose reputation, considering that it's reputation that will allow you to rank up with them. In fact, if you lose enough reputation with a faction, you'll actually lose ranks with them. Even if you don't do any quests for them for ages, you'll still lose reputation with them since they presume that you just don't care enough to give them help. However, you can also fail a quest by simply saying no to it when it's offered to you, including main story quests. If you fail a main story quest, then that's it. You're done with that quest line. The NPC won't be like, oh, okay, well, I'll be here if you change your mind about helping me. No, they'll be like, okay, I'll just find someone else to do this task for me then. Guess you didn't want all this important information I had. Oh well. And you can't pick up the next quest until you've completed that one. So unless you reload an old save, then I guess King Lysandus will be a spooky boy for a long time to come. Actually completing a quest will take some patience and investigative work on your part too. Quite often you'll be tasked with finding out something about someone from some particular place, but even once you've reached the correct location, it might be a big city and the NPC you're looking for is hidden. So then you need to ask around and see if anyone knows anything, and by anyone I mean the first person you find. So you go up to them, demand to know where this person is in a loud voice, and when they say they don't know, continue to yell the question until they give up and tell you what you need to know. Not only telling you who the person is or where they are, but even pointing out where they are on the map. I've always wanted to be a passerby in these cases, where you see someone repeatedly shouting the same question over and over again at an innocent NPC.
Did you rape this woman?
No.
Did you rape this woman?
No.
Did you rape this woman?
No.
Did you rape this woman?
Yes, whatever you say!
But that's not the tough part. Imagine picking up a simple quest like going to a nearby cave and killing a bandit, only to be in that damn cave for 3 hours! No, I'm not kidding. This is actually one of my favourite and yet most hated parts about this game. A dungeon dive in either Morrowind, Oblivion or Skyrim won't take you any longer than 30 minutes at most. In fact, many of Morrowind's caves and dungeons are quite short. But when the developers of this game have turned around and said that maybe it's best not to try to fully explore each dungeon you come to, should give you a hint as to what you've got waiting for you. Labyrinthine does not begin to describe the sheer scale of Daggerfall's dungeons. You'll come out with hordes of gold and loot for sure, maybe even some much needed levels too, but damn me if a part of me isn't forever left behind in each of those dungeons. Despite what the devs have suggested in not fully exploring each dungeon, you kind of have to anyway. The phrase procedurally generated gets thrown around a lot when it comes to Daggerfall, and that's not actually fair. Arena was for sure, from what I can gather, but most of Daggerfall's dungeons are handcrafted for the most part. Sure, which dungeon you'll get is procedurally generated, and even if you come to the same place on a brand new playthrough, the interior might be completely different, but that doesn't mean that a computer just slapped the dungeon together at the last moment. Although based on where it places some of the quest items, you think it is. Sometimes you'll be tasked with going into a dungeon and retrieving an object, but while the dungeon itself isn't randomly generated, the location where you need to go, what item you need, and where in said dungeon the item spawns is randomly generated. As such, it's entirely possible, and even likely, that the quest item will be loaded into a room that literally cannot be physically accessed by the player. Thus, ladies and gentlemen, we find out that the one rule in the Iliac Bay is cheese or be cheesed, for I cannot think of any other main entry into the Elder Scrolls game, not counting Arena, where the use of console commands is an entirely legitimate strategy. There will be times where you spend hours in a dungeon looking for one item that just cannot be found, so don't be afraid to use the command tele2q marker, because you'll probably find yourself in a small room with no way out. Just make sure to slap down a marker at either the entrance of the dungeon or right in front of the quest giver so you can actually get out of that place. Alright, skills and magic. Honestly, some of this stuff, if it were to be included in a new Elder Scrolls game today, it'd be praised as the greatest addition to the series ever. Now, I totally understand why Levitate was removed from the series after Morrowind, but you could still allow for it outside of major settlements. But Mark and Recall, which are spells that allow you to teleport to locations set by the player, are a great idea. They got rid of it because of fast travel, but I'd still say it's useful. But then there's climbing. Easily one of the best features of this game to have been removed. I guess they got rid of it because we already had Levitate, but for the non-magic users among us, the idea of being able to climb up any wall you see and start jumping around roofs Assassin's Creed style is hours of fun that we'll just never get back now. Even the spellmaking and potion making features of this game are way more advanced and interesting than how it is in any of the other games, and it's a real shame to see that a lot of these great features were lost in favour of making the games more streamlined. Daggerfall is definitely a classic CRPG, and that's not what Elder Scrolls really is anymore. In some regards I'm glad for it, but in other regards I'm a little bit sad about that. The handcrafted nature of the games after this and the improvements on the combat system really makes the more recent games more fun to play, but in terms of true role-playing, Daggerfall in my opinion is the best for that. Morrowind came after this game and is 100% the richer experience, but at the same time it still doesn't offer quite the same freedom that Daggerfall does, with said freedom being eroded away as the series goes on. In conclusion, you already know I said it, but yes, this comes as a high recommendation from me. I understand that this game isn't for everyone, and if you're not into fantasy role-playing, or Elder Scrolls in general, then this one won't be for you too. But even if you are into Elder Scrolls games and are thinking, I'm not sure about this one, then I'd say give it a go. And if you've never played this game before but are interested, like I said, it's free. Go now and play it. Do go into this game with care though, and plan your character appropriately, and do remember to save like every 7 seconds, because this game crashes a lot and you will die a lot too. A good rule of thumb is, are you about to go through a door, or turn a corner, or enter a new area, or see enemies ahead, or do anything, and has it been over 5 seconds since you last quick saved? Then quick save. This game also has multiple endings that ended up getting retconned by the Warp in the West, so just know that whichever ending you got, ultimately it doesn't matter. But if you can keep one finger hovering over the quick save button and a pen and paper to hand to take notes, that's actually quite a big ask for players these days, then I guess Daggerfall is going to be worth your time. And if you're in a dungeon for longer than 5 hours and no one has heard from you, tell a friend or a loved one in advance to come find you, because otherwise we'll never see you again.